Today, an FDA approval in chronic lymphocytic leukemia, a recommendation in soft tissue sarcoma, a partial clinical hold on a cervical cancer trial, an application withdrawn in non-small cell lung cancer, and a European approval in ovarian cancer. Welcome to Enclave News Network. I'm Gina Columbus. The FDA has approved the combination of ibrutinib and obinutuzumab for the frontline treatment of patients with chronic lymphocytic leukemia or small lymphocytic lymphoma. The decision is based on results from the Phase 3 Illuminate trial, in which the combination demonstrated a 77% reduction in the risk of progression or death compared with chlorambucil plus obinutuzumab. At a median follow-up of 31 months, the independent review committee assessed median progression-free survival was not reached versus 19 months for chlorambucil and obinutuzumab. The FDA also updated the ibrutinib label to include additional long-term efficacy data supporting its use as a monotherapy in CLL and SLL, with approximately 5-year follow-up data from the Phase 3 Resonate and Resonate 2 trials. Additional results of the international open-label randomized Phase 3 Illuminate trial showed that patients with high-risk disease who were treated with the ibrutinib combination experienced an 85% reduction in the risk of progression or death. The IRC evaluated overall response rate was 89% in ibrutinib and obinutuzumab arm versus 73% in the chlorambucil obinutuzumab arm. Overall survival had not yet been reached in either arm. In advanced soft tissue sarcoma, the FDA has recommended that no new patients should be treated with the combination of olaratumab plus doxorubicin following the negative results of the Phase 3 announced trial. The agency's statement follows the January 2019 announcement that olaratumab plus doxorubicin missed the announced trial's primary endpoint of overall survival and did not confirm a clinical benefit for patients with advanced or metastatic STS compared with standard doxorubicin. The OS endpoint in the leiomyosarcoma subpopulation was also not met. Moreover, the European Medicines Agency issued a similar recommendation based on the negative findings of the confirmatory trial, also stating that the combination of olaratumab and doxorubicin should not be administered in any new patients with advanced STS. Both regulatory authorities made statements recommending that patients currently receiving olaratumab may continue to receive the treatment if they appear to be benefiting from it. Results of ANNOUNCE, which was the confirmatory trial for the FDA approval of olaratumab in this setting, showed that there was no difference in OS between the two arms. The median OS was 20.4 months with olaratumab and doxorubicin and 19.7 months with doxorubicin. In the leiomyosarcoma subpopulation, the median OS was 21.6 months and 21.9 months for olaratumab and doxorubicin respectively. The FDA has placed a partial clinical hold on the Phase 3 AIM-2-SERVE trial, exploring the use of axatilimogene felolispac in patients with high-risk, locally advanced cervical cancer. The communication from the agency cites that the partial hold has been put in place until additional information on chemistry, manufacturing, and control matters associated with Axil are received. There were no safety issues associated with the trial cited. Additionally, all patients currently enrolled will continue to receive treatment with the agent. However, no new patients can enroll in the trial until the hold is resolved. Advaxis, the manufacturer of the immunotherapy agent, stated that it has already taken steps to provide the FDA with the requested information on Axil in an effort to get the hold lifted in a timely manner. In July 2018, the FDA previously lifted a clinical hold on a Phase 1-2 study of Axil in combination with durvalumab in patients with advanced, recurrent, or refractory cervical cancer and human papillomavirus-associated head and neck cancer. The hold was initiated in March 2018 following a patient death related to acute respiratory failure after 9 months of Axil treatment. Following the hold, Advaxis agreed to new guidelines for the early detection and treatment of rare adverse events, acute respiratory failure. In non-small cell lung cancer, Bristol Myers Squibb withdrew its supplemental biologics license application for the combination of nivolumab and ipilimumab for the frontline treatment of patients with advanced disease with tumor mutational burden, at least 10 mutations per megabase, following recent discussions with the FDA. The agency initially accepted the application in June 2018 based on findings from the Phase 3 Checkmate 227 trial, which showed that the 1-year progression-free survival rate was 43% for patients with high TMB assigned to the immunotherapy combination, compared with 13% for those assigned to platinum doublet chemotherapy. In October 2018, BMS submitted an exploratory overall survival analysis to the FDA from Part 1 of the Checkmate 227 trial, which included a low TMB subgroup of patients with stage 4 or recurrent NSCLC who had not received prior therapy. With these updated data, the FDA extended the review period by 3 months, which made the new action date May 20, 2019. However, the new data showed no difference in survival outcomes between patients whose tumors had high or low levels of TMB. The European Commission has approved an expanded indication for maintenance rucaparib in adult patients with platinum-sensitive, relapsed, high-grade epithelial ovarian, fallopian tube, or primary peritoneal cancer who are in complete or partial response to platinum-based chemotherapy, regardless of BRCA status. The decision is based on findings from the Phase 3 Ariel 3 trial, in which rucaparib led to an investigator-assessed median progression-free survival of 10.8 months, compared with 5.4 months with placebo across the entire study population. Also, the overall response rate with rucaparib was 18%. Additional results showed that in patients with germline or somatic BRCA mutations, there was a 77% reduction in the risk of progression or death with rucaparib versus placebo. The median PFS with rucaparib in this population was 16.6 months versus 5.4 months with placebo. Similar PFS benefits were observed in patients with BRCA wild-type tumors and those with homologous recombination deficiency or low to high loss of heterozygosity. The FDA approved the PARP inhibitor in this setting in April 2018, also based on the Ariel 3 findings. This week, we sat down with Dr. Nia Mehta Shah of the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis to discuss peripheral T-cell lymphoma treatment and future directions.
So Dr. Naban at ASH this year presented on a retrospective review of about 200 patients who have peripheral T-cell lymphoma across a number of subtypes. The purpose of this was to look at a real-world experience with peripheral T-cell lymphomas in the United States. He had shown that the median survival for these patients, again, is about 6 months, although there's a subset of patients who certainly had much longer remissions. And when you look at his curves, it looks like there's a percentage of people who may have been cured with their second or third line of therapy. It was clear from the work that he presented that upfront autologous transplant for consolidation was not as commonly practiced in the community as it may be at certain large academic centers. But it's hard to draw conclusions as the patient populations may be notably different. Yeah, I think there's still a lot of questions left to answer in peripheral T-cell lymphomas. I think specifically in the relapsed refractory setting, there's a number of either combinations of therapies that are currently being used or novel therapies that are being explored. So for example, we had published previously on the combination of romidepsin and lenalidomide and romidepsin, lenalidomide, and carfilzomib in 2 independent studies in peripheral T-cell lymphoma, which look like they have overall response rates in the 40 to 50% range. The response rates are higher, near 100% in angioimmunoblastic T-cell lymphoma from these combinations. And so there's a clear push in the T-cell lymphoma community of experts to start to identify which histologies benefit from certain types of drugs, and maybe angioimmunoblastic T-cell lymphoma it should be treated differently than other types of peripheral T-cell lymphoma, especially in the relapse setting. Similarly, Owen O'Connor's group at this meeting is presenting on romidepsin 5-azacitidine, which also looks very promising in angioimmunoblastic T-cell lymphoma. There are efforts through the U.S. intergroup to consider comparing these therapeutic strategies head-to-head, but that is being explored. Additionally, there's a role for PI3 kinase inhibition in peripheral T-cell lymphomas as well. Dr. Horowitz and colleagues presented on duvelisib in combination with romidepsin or duvelisib in combination with bortezomib at this meeting as well, with response rates of 50 to 60%, and some of those responses being quite durable, which in fact, some were so deep that they led patients to move on to an allogeneic transplant. And so that's also a promising strategy. Duvelisib is being explored in a national phase 2 study in peripheral T-cell lymphomas to better identify the efficacy in these rare diseases. So I think there's a number of potential new strategies that are being explored by ourselves and many of my colleagues to try to improve the care for people with peripheral T-cell lymphomas overall, and to try to develop therapies that are tolerable also long-term for those who cannot get an allogeneic stem cell transplant. And we're also investigating the role of transplant itself further in peripheral T-cell lymphomas and to identify who best benefits from this. I think the other challenge that we face is that the histology is not as well understood, and the pathophysiology is not always as well understood in peripheral T-cell lymphomas. And so we're learning that a group of people who have PTCL-NOS may in fact really have, by gene expression profiling or by genomic sequencing, may really look more like AITL or a different disease. And as we have better understanding of the biology of these diseases, we'll be better equipped to develop new therapies for them. As a junior investigator who is devoted to improving the care of peripheral T-cell lymphoma, it's a very exciting time. I think the results of Echelon 2 are the first study in peripheral T-cell lymphoma to show a survival benefit, which is incredibly exciting for our community. And then we're very hopeful as we've developed new therapies and have better understanding of the biology of these diseases that we'll be able to move the bar forward both for patients in the upfront setting and hopefully also in the relapsed refractory setting.
That's all for today. Thank you for watching Enclave News Network. I'm Gina Columbus.